Welcome everyone. In this video, we're going to work on the user authentication. We're going to reuse the Node Express server template that we put together in the previous lesson. So we're going to start by going to the GitHub repo. You can find the link in the description. And once you're there, we're going to click on the green code button here. And we're going to copy the link to the GitHub repository so we can clone it. And then we're going to go into your terminal using git bash because I'm on Windows here. And make sure you cd into the folder where you want to clone this repository. If you didn't see how we put together the template, you can watch the previous video. But in here, we're just going to clone the template so we can continue from here. So I'm going to type git clone. Then I'm going to paste the link there. And that's not what I need to copy. Let's try to copy that again and paste it in here. And after you paste the link, we're going to type // and we're going to name this one. Let's name it user-off. So we're going to clone it, but we're going to change the name of the folder because I don't want to use the same folder name that we used before. So let's say user-of-template. So that way we can also keep it as a template for authentication if we need more in the future. So hit enter and you're going to clone down the project into your new folder. Now we can cd into user-off, and I'm gonna hit type so I can tab so it can help me finish that up. And once you're there, we should be able to open this up with VS Code. So we can type code space dot if that works for you. If not, just open a new VS Code window and open the new folder that was created there. So I'm gonna drag this window over here. This is the project inside of VS Code. Now in here, we can open a new terminal. So from this terminal, you can click terminal and hit new terminal if you want to. And then we're going to, inside of this terminal, this is the terminal we're going to use. So we could actually close the other terminal. But here, inside of this terminal, we're going to install all the dependencies that we have in the package.json. And we're also going to install some new dependencies that we're going to use for this project. So in here, we're going to type npm i, so we can install all the dependencies that we already have listed in here. So Express, Helmet, Morgan, and NodeMon. And we should be able to run this template by just typing now npm run dev. So we can start it with NodeMon. So we can test it out by typing npm run dev. And we should be able to run the project in port 4000. Cool. So the next step, we're going to install the dependencies that we're going to use for the new project. So to add the authentication, the user model, we're going to need a few packages. I'm going to stop this terminal again. And I'm going to type npm i, and we're going to install Mongoose. We need JSON Web Tokens, web token singular. We're gonna need cookie dash session, and we're going to need .env, and last we need Bcrypt as well. And I'm going to hit enter there. So Mongoose is going to help us to create our user model and talk to our MongoDB database that we're going to put together with this application. We're going to use JSON Web Tokens to create a authentication token once the user is registered. We're going to use the cookie session to add a cookie to the project as well. .env so we can hide our environment variables. And then Bcrypt to has the password in our database. So now again, we should be able to run npm run dev after installing all the different dependencies. And there we go. We're still running, and we got all the dependency that we needed. The next step will be to make sure we have the MongoDB community server installed in our computers. If you have your cloud link, if you want to use your cloud Atlas database from MongoDB, you can use that as well. But you can either use Atlas here, or you can download the community server here. So the community server is just going to install the database in your local computer. So search MongoDB community server. Click on the first link that says download MongoDB community server. And then you're going to scroll down, and depending if you're on Mac, you're going to run these commands here. If you are on, let's say, Windows, you're going to, let me expand this a little bit more. So I can see select package, Atlas, and more. Let me see if it is going to give me, no, it should be here somewhere. So MongoDB community server. Okay, so that's for Homebrew if you're Mac, and then get started with the cloud. If you want to use the client ones, you can use Atlas, but I'm going to go for, let me click here, download, where is the Windows section here? More, no, community edition, it should be here, community edition here. So now if you're on Windows, you got to select it here. So I already have it installed, but if you are on Mac, you got to run these commands. If you're on Windows, you have to just download the installer and run through the default steps just to install the community server. So just leave everything default, just click next and install. And it will also guide you through the installation. It will give you the different steps that you need to follow, but everything should be just the default. So when you download and install the MongoDB community server, if you opted for this one, you can be using your cloud again. You will also get Compass. Compass is going to be an application that is going to allow us to access the database. So it's going to be the client that we're going to use to look at the database. If I type Compass here, this is the MongoDB Compass that we can use to talk to the database, or MongoDB database, and then we could connect to our local one. So you're going to just connect to localhost 27017. This is the default for MongoDB. So you can hit connect here, and you should be able to connect to your database. Let me drop this database here because we're going to create the same database in a second. So that way we can all have the same stuff here. So right now, if you just install it and it's brand new, you don't have any databases listed here, but that's fine. We're going to create one in a few minutes. So Compass, we're going to come back to Compass when we have some data, but this is how we're going to be accessing the database in this application. But then we're also going to talk to our database through our Mongoose model. So let's see. Now let's go into VS Code so we can start putting everything together. Let's look at the source folder here. We have our index.js. We have our server running over here. So I'm going to scroll down and see everything is in place. Cool. So the next step will be to set up our .env, because we're going to set up a environment variable to connect to our database. So let's create a new .env file, and we're going to create that one outside of the src folder. So we're going to just click out here, new file, .env. In the .env, the first environment variable we want to create is going to be MongoDB_URI. So in all caps, I'm going to type MongoDB underscore URI. I'm going to set that equals 2. And then we're going to connect to MongoDB colon / localhost colon 27017, which is the same address we saw inside of the compass when we opened it. But then here I want to say / users -off, because I want to create a database called users of. This is the database that this application is going to use. So we need to specify it here. And then we're going to, now that we're here, we're going to set up a new port environment variables, and we're just going to leave it empty like this so we can have it ready if we decide to deploy this application. Normally the platform when you deploy will set the port that they're going to use here. So we normally just leave it empty for now. And now that we have that, we can go back to, let's go back to the index.js and let's import our .env. So at the top here, I'm going to import .env from, and let's do, and we don't need to import it like this. We can just import in quotes. Let's go .env, and then we just need to do /config like so, and that should do it because we're using the import keyword. This should be importing the .env and configuring the package, and we should be able to access all of the different environment variables that we create here. So we're just kind of like hiding our URI to our database here, and also any other important information like a secret keyword that we're going to put here. We're going to put a few more. They're also going to go here because we need to hide it from the regular code. We cannot put it in the code. We need to put it in the environment in the process that we run in the application. So to test this out, we can just console log process.env.mongodb underscore URI and save. And now if we take a look at the terminal here, we have the URL in here. Cool. So we are able to access these values here. We can get rid of this. This is just for testing here. And now we can move on to actually connect to the MongoDB. So for that, we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to use Mongoose to connect to our MongoDB database. So in SRC, we're going to right click and create a new folder, call it config. Inside of config, we're going to put all the configurations that we need. So we're going to put a new file. I'm just going to call this one connect db.js. The naming convention is up to you, so I'm just going to keep it simple. So connect db.js, it will be the name of my file. And here we're going to write the code that we need in order to connect to our MongoDB database. So we're going to import connect from Mongoose. So Mongoose is the one that is going to allow us to connect and create our models and talk to our database. And then we're going to export default an async function, and we can call it connect db. And then here we're going to have a try catch. We're just going to console log the error here if there's any errors. And inside of the try, we're going to connect to our MongoDB. So here we're going to say, we're going to do a little if statement here. So we're going to say if process.env dot we call it MongoDB underscore URI. So if this is not true, so if it's false, if we don't have this, we're going to just throw a new error, and we're going to say MongoDB URI is require, right? So in case that we try to connect later, we clone it and we try to connect, we forget to do the steps, we're going to throw here a new error. So this is just for checking if this is available. So if we pass that check, we should be able to now run our connection. So we're just gonna call, we're just gonna say await connect MSNC here, and then we're gonna pass process.env.mongodb URI, and then if that happens to be to connect or to be all good, we just going to log a string that says connected to MongoDB, right? So we're just gonna keep it simple in here so we can focus on connecting and making sure we throw an error if we're not able to connect. Refactor that and save. So now that we have that, we're going to import the new function back into our index.js. So here, let's import down here. We can import, we can put at the bottom here, import connect db from ./config connection db.js. Make sure you got the .js at the end. And then we're going to call this function. Let's just call it at the bottom here. So this is going to be our main here, and we're going to call connect db here and save. Let's see if we got any errors. Okay, so here we have server running on port 4000 and connected to MongoDB. So now we are able to start listening for requests in our server, and our server is connected to our MongoDB database. Cool. So for the connection, that's everything we're going to do right now. So we're going to close that up, and we're going to now, let's see what we're going to do next. So we have connected to our MongoDB. Now we should be able to work on our user model. So we can start creating the schema. So inside of the, let's say we don't have a errors, middlewares, routes. So we need to create a new folder for our model. So inside of src, we're gonna right click and create a new folder, models. And then we also need to create a new folder for later that is going to be controllers, and we're going to keep it there for later. But inside of models, we're going to create a new file, and this one we're going to call it user.js. This is going to be the user model that we're going to create. And in here, we're going to create a new user model, using Mongoose. And for that, the first thing we got to do is to bring in Mongoose. So let's do import Mongoose from Mongoose. And then after that, we're going to start creating our schema, our user schema. So we're going to create a new variable called user schema. And we're going to set that equals to a new mongoose.schema. We're going to put parentheses, and then inside of the parentheses, we're going to pass a new object, which is going to detail how our schema, or our user schema, is going to look. So the things that we're going to need for the user, we're going to keep it simple for the required stuff. So I think we're going to put a email and a password, and then we're going to set up two properties, the isAdmin and isVerify. So that way we can have those properties as well. And later we can do some email confirmation just to verify the email in another video. But here, let's do email, right? So every user needs to provide an email. So an email will be of type string, right? And then we're going to make a require. So user must provide a email when they are registering. Then also we're going to make this unique. So we're going to say unique to true. So that way, if the user tries to register with a email that already exists in the database, it would throw an error. And then we're going to make it, let's make it lowercase. So make sure when we save it, is saved as lowercase. So lower, upper, this uses camel case, so lowercase, make it true. And then we're going to have a regex. So we're going to type match, and then we're going to pass in a regex here. I'm just going to copy and paste it here. This is just a simple regex for verifying an email. You can use your own, or you can use this one. If you want to search for a different one, you can also do that. And then we also want to make a index in our database using the email. So that way we have a way to access or query the users with the email, and our database will create an index that is going to access that faster than just checking all the data inside of the different users. So that's everything for the email. We're also going to need a password. And the password is also going to be of type string. For this one, we're going to make a require. So before we create a user, we need to provide a password. So that way we don't have unstructured data in our database. And then we're going to pass also a min length of 8. This is up to you. We're just going to set it to 8, but you can make this higher if you want. And then you can also do some regex in here if you want to look for a more stronger password. But right now we're just going to keep it simple that you can type any password, and then you can always come back to the schema and make any changes you need. So that's everything we're gonna need for the password. And then the other two is gonna be isAdmin. Here, this one we're going to set it to type Boolean. And it's not going to be required, but it's going to have a default value of false. So the initial value is gonna be false. So it's not gonna be an admin. And then we're also going to have the same here. I'm just gonna type it is verify. Yeah, verify. And this one is also going to be a type Boolean. And we're going to set the default to false. Cool. So those are the 4 things that we are going to have for the user schema. Not only the email and the password are required, these 2 are going to have default values of false. But later we can, if we want to create a admin, we can always set this to true to any of the different users that we have. And then later we can also verify, maybe in a different video, we can verify the user with an email using a no mailer package. So we can send an email and they can verify their email, and then we will make this true. But for now, we're just gonna keep it here in place in case we want to do that later. So after the closing curly bracket here, let's put a comma, and then let's pass in a another object here for different options that you can set. We're going to set timestamps to these schemas. So we're going to have a timestamp for when the user gets created or anytime it gets updated. And that's it for now. Oh no, timestamps, let's set it to true. In here, whoops, that's not what I want. Keep it true, that's fine. And let's see, right now, this is fine. Let's just scroll down after creating the schema. We're going to type export default, and we're going to create a new mongoose dot model, and then we're going to pass the string user, and then comma, and then we're going to pass in the user schema. Notice I'm using uppercase U here for the name of the model. So here we are going to create a new mongoose model using the schema that was provided, and we're going to name it user. So now with this, we should be able to start creating some users in our application. And for that, we're going to now move on to the routes. So for the routes that we have at the moment, we only have the health check, which is just so we can check if the server is running. Here, we're going to right click and create a new file. We're going to call it users.js. Notice here we call it a singular user, and here we're just calling users. So normally in the models, we just call it singular. Then everywhere else we do plural. It's just convention, but doesn't really matter. So here for the user routes, we're going to create a new router. So let's import router from Express. And then we're going to say const router equals Express. Nope, equals a new router. And here's where we're going to do all the different methods, handlers, request handlers. So we're going to do one for signing up by users. So we're going to do, let's do a little string here, documenting string. We're going to do add method. This is going to be a post method, and add path. The path here will be /users /sign up. This is what we're going to create. So just documenting the new route that we're about to create. So we're going to use the router dot post to create a new post route, and we're going to pass in the path /sign up, and then we're going to pass a async request and response handler. And here's where we're going to put all the code that we need in order to sign up a user using the model that we just created. Let's export default router here before I forget. So we're going to work on the request handler here, but then later we want to move this function to its own file inside of the controllers. But I'm going to do that after, so we can keep it kind of like more simple here, and then we'll extract the code from here to its own file for better scalability of the application. So in here, we're going to start putting together the post route to /sign up, which is going to come in through this route over here. And we don't have the route yet, so we need to bring in this router and set it up. So let's just save this file and go back to the index.html, and then we're going to have let's import the user router. So here we have the health check router You can put it right next to this, and we're going to say import. Let's do user router from that /routes/users.js. Make sure you got .js at the end. And then this user router, we're going to add it to the routes here. So we're going to use app.use. And this is going to be /API/v1, then /users. And anything that goes to this endpoint here, let me delete the T here, API v1 users is going to be routed to the user router. And we're going to handle the requests to this path inside of this file. So anything that goes to /signup, we're going to handle it here if it's a post request. So now we should be able to, we can test it really quick. We can do rest.send, and we can say okay. And then we can use Postman to test this route. And if you don't have Postman, you can download it as an extension in VS Code. And then here we can make a post request to http://localhost:/API/API/v1/users/signup. And now if we hit send here, we can see that our request came in to our server, and we got back the string okay. So perfect. This is good. So now we should be able to work inside of this request handler here. Let's see what we're going to need. So here we're going to first, let's work on, okay, let's see. So what things are required for to create a user? So the two things that are required is going to be an email and a password, right? These two, we don't need to wait for any client to send this data, because this is going to be default data that we're going to have every time we create a user. So everything we need in here will be the request, the email and the password. So we're going to destructure that from the request.body. So we're gonna grab the email and the password from the request.body. So that is going to come in from the client. So when we send it here, let's say we're gonna send some data here inside of the body, raw JSON, not JavaScript, but JSON. Here we need to send an email, which we can set test user1@test.com. And then we're going to also send a password. That could be password 1 exclamation, something like that. It just needs to be at least 8 characters if you did main length of 8. And we can test that in a second. So this here is what is gonna be sent by any application inside of the body. We're going to grab that from the body, the email and password, and then we're going to create the user with this new information. So there's a few steps that we need to do here. So the first step that we need to do is to check if the email is in use. That's the first check we need to do. So we're gonna need to use the model that we created, and we're going to check for this email. And then here, let's just bring in the model at the top here, we're going to do import user from data/models/user.js. Make sure you got the .js at the end. And then anytime that we need to talk to our database, we're going to use the user model. And then if we have multiple models, there are going to be different collections inside of your MongoDB database. And you can bring in as many models as you need. Right now, we only have the user. So we're going to use the user here to check if the email that was provided is already inside of our database. So here we're going to have an if statement. So let's say if, before we check, we need to do, let's do const email in use. And we're going to set that equals to await user dot find one. And then we're going to pass in the curly brackets here, and we're going to pass in the email that was provided. Right, so we're using the user model to find a document with the matching email that was provided here. So doing this is the same as doing this. In JavaScript, when the property and the value are named the same, you can just do this and it's fine. So we're going to check if email is in use. So if we're able to find a document with that email, this is going to be a truth value. So we can take care of that here. But if it's not able to find one, it's going to return null and it's going to be falsy. So if we find an email, so that means we already have a user registered with this email, we're going to throw a new error, and the error that we want to throw here is going to be a bad request. So this type of error, we're going to use it multiple times. So I think it's good a good time to kind of like stop and create a new error class really quick. And we can put one really simple back inside of the, let's comment this out for now and save it. And let's pause here to go to the errors here. We already have a not found error here, which is just a class that is going to have the status code for the not found error, and then a message for the error of not found. And then there's a serialized errors function that can be called to return an array of the different errors that you could be returning from here. Here we're just returning one, but this is going to be something that is useful just so you can have the same structure for your different errors that you send into the front end. So here we're going to create a new file. We're going to call this one embed-request-error.js. So here we're going to create, let's do export default, and we're going to export default a new class, and we're going to call this one bad request error, and this one is going to extend a error. So we're just extending the error class, and here we're going to set the status code to 400, and then inside of the constructor we're going to take in a message, because the bad request could have different messages. We're going to make it reusable by taking a message, and then we're going to call super, which is the constructor of the error class, and we're going to pass in the message. And then here we're also going to set that message equals to the message, so that way we can also return it from the array. So for now we're serialized. function. So serialize errors. We're going to return here. And I got too many R's here. Too many and too little. Okay, so we're going to return a new array and we're going to pass in a message. And the message is going to be this dot message. And that's it. So this one could be reused. We can pass in, if we do it more, or like we can always come back and add more functionality to the class. And then we just want to keep the same response, which is going to be an array of the error messages. So that way we can all be consistent throughout the different errors that we create, just like we did here. So with this one, this is fine. This is everything we need. We got the status code, we got the message that we're going to receive. So we could close this up and then we can go back to the user routes. So inside of routes users, again, we can import this new class that we created, this error class. So let's go into, let's just import it here. Import bad request error from data / errors / bad request error.js. Cool. So now we're gonna use this error here, so we can comment this back in. So we're gonna throw a new error, and we're going to say bad request error, and we're gonna pass in a error of email in use, and we're gonna keep it at email in use for us, so we know if something goes wrong right now during development. But here you don't want to specify what things went wrong specifically, because this could be used to kind of like hack into your application. We can just use we can send a message of saying like check credentials or something like that. But here we're just gonna keep this message email in use, so we know that we're trying to create a new user with an email that is already in use. But you can always come back and just change it to check credentials instead of this message. So we're going to save that here. So here, if we search with the email, if we found a document with that email, we're going to throw an error, and this is going to trigger the Express middleware that we have in place here for the errors. And then the error middleware is going to respond to the user with the status. And we need to come in here and set that up, because we only have the one for not found error. So we also need to import the bad request error, and then we can do the same thing we did here. So we're going to have another if statement. So let's do bad request error, and here we're gonna do if error is an instance of bad request error, and instance of, there we go. And then if this is true, if the error is an instance of bad request error, so this is the error that we're throwing at the moment, we're going to return, and we're going to say res.status, and we're going to use in the error.status status code, which is the one we set in the class, in the error class, and then .send, and then we're going to send the we're going to put an object in here just like we did at the top, and we're going to say errors And then we're going to do error that serialize errors, and we're going to call it so it can return the array. Right now we only have one error inside of the array, but if we had more and we go back in here and we change that to have multiple errors in there, that is when this is going to return the array with all of the different errors. So good. Now we're keeping this consistent. The response back to the user, to the client, will be in the same structure, which is important. And I think we can close this up now, and we can now go back to the routes. So let's go back to the routes here, and let's see if we had to do anything else here before we can test it. So let's see, we got the email. Okay, so we passed this check. We should be able to create a new user, right? Because this email is not in use, so we made it all the way here. And we're going to do const user equals new user, right? We're going to use the model to create a new user, and we're going to pass in the email and the password that we got from the request.body. And then we're going to do await user.save, so we can save the new instance that we're creating here. We'll save it in the database in line 22. At that point, our user is created and saved. So now we should be able to do res.status, and we're gonna do a 201 for created, and then .json to send the new user that was created. And now we should be able to test that this is all working. So now back in Postman here, we could send this request with this data inside of the body, right? Inside of the body, we're gonna send this email and password, making a post request to our endpoint. It will hit send. We can see we have the logger showing that we got a new request. And then in the response, we see that we have the email, the password, is admin, is verified. We have a underscore ID, that this underscore ID gets assigned by MongoDB when a new document is created. And we have our timestamps at the bottom here. Before we continue to the next step, let's just verify that if we make a new request with the same email, we get an error. Just double check. So if I hit send, now we have a new error here, and we have bad request email in use, and that's because we have a new post request, and we're trying to create a new email. a new user with the same email. So we're throwing an error here, and let's just save it to bring back up the server, or stop the terminal and run it again. And also let's try to make a request without the email here, hit send. And we also have one that says in here, validation error, and the validation error says path email is required. So we need the email. Same thing would be if we forgot to send the password. So let's just save the file again, or restart the terminal and hit send. And right now we got, we got a comma here. Let's send it again. And we got email in use. And then even if I put email 2 here and send it again, let's just save it and run it again. And wait for your terminal to come back up. Send it again with the new email, but then it says validation error and the password is required. So we need to pass in a comma here, and then set the password to password 1 exclamation. Now Let's restart this again. And now we should be able to hit send and register a new user. With the test user 2, we get the response. Right now we're getting the email. But here we can see we're getting the plain text password. So this is being saved as a plain text data to the database. So this is bad. We need to fix that next so we can hash the password. We're going to use Bcrypt in order to hash the password and store the hash in the database. So let's see in here now, we could go to our schema, to our user schema now that we tested, that the email, the new users are being created. Also, if you open up your Compass and you refresh here, you should be able to see your users off database. And if you click on that, you're going to see your new users collection. Click on that. And then you should be able to see your 2 new users. And you can see the plain text password there, which is what we're going to fix next. All right, let's put this down. And now let's go back to the user schema. So inside of the models, users, we're going to work on right after we create this schema. So let me hide this terminal for a second. So that way you have more space here to see. Here we're going to use the pre-hook on Mongoose in order to add a new function here before we save it. So let's do a comment here. So we're going to say password encryption, and we're going to use the user schema. So we're going to user schema here, and from Mongoose we can add that pre-hook function. So we're going to use the pre-save. So before we save the document, we're going to run this function here. So we can just pass it a callback function. So we're going to pass in an async function, and then we're going to pass in next here to be able to go to the next middleware when we're done. So here we're going to encrypt the password so we can store the hash inside of the database instead of the plain text password. And we're only going to hash it if the password property was modified. So if this was a change on the password here, we should hash it before we save it. So we're going to check if. Then we're going to check if this dot is modified here, which is something we can check with Mongoose. So make sure this function is a regular function, not an arrow function. So because this keyword will point to the user schema that is being accessed at the moment. So if this dot is modified, and we're going to check for the password, it's to see if the password was modified. If that's true, we're going to create a new hash. And we're going to do that with Bcrypt. And Bcrypt, we're going to import it at the top. So we're going to say import Bcrypt from Bcrypt. And then we're going to go here and we're going to use the Bcrypt that hash method. So in order to create the hash, so for that, we're going to say const here, come on. We're going to call it hash password equals, and we're going to use the await Bcrypt dot hash in order to hash the password here. So Bcrypt dot hash is going to need the password that we're going to hash. So we're just going to access it using this and that password. And then we need to pass in to Bcrypt the salts or the salt rounds. So how is basically a number of how strong you want the hash to be. So that could be any number from like 10 to 12 maybe, or maybe higher, but the higher you put this, the more expensive these operations going to be. So we're just going to set it at 10, which is the recommended from the Bcrypt documentation, but you can set this up to 12 or maybe more depending on what's recommended when you work on a different company. So after we create the hash password, we're just going to do a reassignment here. So we're going to do this and that password is going to be equals to the hash password here. And that's what we're going to save. So after the if statement, we're just going to call next, because at this point we're done. So this is only going to run if the password is modified. So at the beginning when it gets created, or if we update the password of the user as well. We're going to hash it, and then that's what we're going to store in the database. So let's test this out. Let's open up Postman again here. And then let's register. Here we see that the previous one we did, user 2, we got the plain text password. Here if we do test user 3 and we hit send, now we got the email, we got the password hash in here. And this is something you don't want to send to the front end. This is not required. You can delete that from the request. We can do that later, but I just want to keep it here so we can actually see it. So this is the hash, and then these are these other two properties, underscore ID and the timestamps. And this is something that is for Mongoose or MongoDB version, so that's something we don't care about. Also something that we could delete, so that way we send less information to the client. And this is something we don't even want to sent to the client because it's not necessary. This is only needed in the backend inside of our business logic. So this is good. This is the hash. Now if you look at your compass here and you refresh, we can refresh here. Now we see we got test user 3, and what we stored was the hash password here. Cool. So later when we work on signing up a user, we can use another method from Bcrypt in order to decode this hash that we have created here for the password. So next step will be let me double check here. It will be to work on creating a JWT token. So we have a JWT token, a JSON Web Token dependency that we install. So for now, we use Mongoose already. We use Bcrypt already. We also work on .env. So what we got left is to create a JSON Web Token for authorization. So after the user signs up or sign in, we should create a JSON Web Token. So that way we know that they are verified, they authenticated, and they have this token that should allow them access to some type of access inside of the application. And we're also going to create a cookie to store that in there. That is actually optional, but I'm going to show you to set that up, how to set that up anyways. So let's see. Let's work on creating the JWT token. So for that, we're going to work on creating a new method inside of the user schema. So we can actually go back again to the user schema here. And after the pre-hook that we created here, we can do a custom method. So we can use user schema dot methods dot, we can call this one generate JWT. and that is going to be methods JWT equals a function like so. Cool. So inside of this function is where we're going to create and return a new JSON Web Token. So for that, we need to import our JSON Web Token. So let's do import JWT from JSON Web Token. And now we can go back to the function here, and we can return we're going to call JWT dot sign, and the dot sign is the method that is going to create the token with some payload that we pass in. So the payload will be the information that we want to store inside of the JSON Web Token. If you don't know how a JSON Web Token is divided, you can go to JWT.io, and here they will show you how a JSON Web Token is divided. It's divided into 3 sections. So the first section, they go separated by a dot. We have the header, which is the red section here. The purple section is the payload, or the data that we want to put inside of this JWT token. And the blue one is the signature verification. So what we're going to pass into this one here is going to be the payload. So we're going to pass in an object here. And inside of the object, we're going to pass in the information we want to add to this payload of the JSON Web Token. So we're going to put a ID, and we're going to set the ID to this dot underscore ID, which is going to be the ID of the user that we just created. And then we're also going to add the email, and we're going to set that to the this and that email. So we're going to grab the email from the user that we just created. So when we send the token, the only information that we're going to send is the ID of the user, and that should be enough. But here we're also going to send the email inside of the JSON Web Token, but even the ID is just fine because you can always get all the information from the ID. So this is actually optional here, but I'm going to keep it here. So after this payload that we pass in here, we need to pass as the second parameter. Here you can put all the information you want, but after that object here, that's the payload object, we need to pass in another let's see, what do we need to send? We need to send the payload and then a secret or private key, which we need to set for this application. So we're going to set a environment variable with that secret or private key, and we're going to store that in process.env.jwt underscore secret, and this name is up to you, but is kind of like clear what this is our secret key that is going to be used to sign or to create in this JSON Web Token. And then we're going to go to the .env file and create that. So we're going to go to .env, and right after port we can say JWT underscore secret. Make sure those names are the same. And then this JWT secret, it could be a string of letters and numbers, a combination of letters and numbers. And if you want to get one that is actually a good long string, you can open your terminal, you can stop the server for a second, and then you can just type open SSL, and then you can use the random or ran-hex 64 to create a random string of 64 bits, and then hit enter, and we can copy that random string here if you want to use it. So there's different ways to create these. There's websites that will generate a key for you, but I'm just gonna use this one and I'm going to paste it here. This is gonna be the secret key that my JWT library will use to sign my tokens that are going to be created inside of this application. And now we can run the application again. And now we have a value here. And then we're going to go back to the user schema, users models, and then we're going to finish that up there. And then the last thing we need to pass in here is the options object. And then the only options that we need to set here is the expires in. So expires, is it expires? I think is, yeah, expires in. And then we can set this to the string 24 hours, but you can set this to minutes, 10 minutes, 1 minute, and days, a whole year. But it does depends on the length of the whatever strategy you're using for your creating your tokens. It could be that you just create one every single hour if you want to keep everything super secure, or maybe just one every 24 hours. So I'm just gonna keep it to 24 hours. And then if the time that this token is generated is past 24 hours, that token will be invalid. So for now, we're just gonna keep it here. And then let's put a comment here and let's say generate JWT token using user info or the user's info. And we're done with this for now. So now we have this method that we can use. This is a instance method, so we're going to be using that inside of the routes that we're going to go back to. So now we can go back to the sign up route. And now what we're going to do is that we're going to generate the token. So after we save the user, right, after we create our instance, this is our instance here. Now we're able to call, let's say const of token. We're going to set that equals to user dot generate JWT, and that should give us a auth token or an authorization token using JSON Web Tokens. And for that, we're just going to, let's just send it together here for now. So I'm going to put this into an object here. And I'm just going to also send the auth token here for now. So we can just see it in the response. And make sure this is the same, not auth token. There we go. So now let's sign up a new user. Go back to Postman and let's do user 4. And we're going to, let me hide this terminal. And then hit send. So we can create a user 4. And now in the response, we're getting an object with the user information and then the auth token that was generated. So now this auth token in the middle, inside of the payload, it has the user information. So we no longer need to send this, but this depends on the strategy you want to use. So I think I will keep the token inside of a cookie, and the user information, we can still send it in the response, and we can erase some of the information that we don't need to send before we can use the dat2JSON function inside of the user schema to do that as well. But let's keep it here now. We can see the token is generated there. So let's see, we got the token. Now we're going to, yeah, let's put the token inside of the cookie so we can set that up. And then let's see. So now let's go back to the users router in the sign up here. And we have the auth token here. And now we need to set up the last package we're going to use in this video will be cookie session. So we're going to set up a new cookie inside of the user's routes. So before we can set this in here, before we can actually use the session object, we're going to go back to index.js and we're going to set this up really quick. So let's import the session cookie section. So all the way at the top, let's import right after maybe helmet. We're gonna say import cookie session from cookie session, right? And then we're gonna scroll down to our middlewares here. So we're gonna set this new middleware here after our URL encoded. We're gonna use app.use. And then we're gonna call our cookie session. And we're gonna pass in a options object, and we're going to set this up in here. So the things that we need to set up to the cookie sessions is that first we need to set up a name. And I'm just gonna call it something generic like my app session, but this name is up to you. And then we're going to set up a secret key to sign also this cookie. So we can use the let's say secret in here as well. Secret here, we can do the same we did with the key for the JWT token. We can also set a new variable inside of .env, or you can just pass it and then you can do process.env here, but I'm just going to put here my app-secret, right? But you can do the same. You can generate a new key, add it to your .env in here as well, and then just access it back in here with process.env and then the name of the environment variable you created. Could be like something like cookie secret, cookie underscore secret. And then here we're gonna do we're going to set the secure. So secure is going to make sure that the cookie is only sent when there is a HTTPS connection. So we only want to set that if we are in production. So we're going to set process.env.node_env equals, or no, let's see, if it's equals to production. So secure is going to be true if process.env.node_env is equals to production. Right now we don't even have one, so that will be false. And that way we can just send the cookies in the HTTP protocol. This is the one we're using now, but when you're deploy, you're going to have the HTTPS for secure, and then this will be true, and then it's going to be sent only on HTTPS, so that way your cookies are secure, being encrypted when you're sending it to any client. So here we can declare that in here as well. We can do node_env. Right now we don't have any setup, but we can have development here. This is in the mode that we are on now. We're not deployed, we're just developing the application, but only when that variable is set to production, which is going to probably be set when you're deployed to a platform. You're going to be able to send only these cookies if we are in the HTTPS protocol. This is all the setups you need in order to do that. Again, you could declare your secret here also. You can do something like we have the, let's do something like cookie underscore session underscore secret, and then you can set that to some random string here as well, right? You can do that as well, and then all you need to do is access this cookie session secret back in your configuration here. So process.env lowercase cookie underscore section underscore secret, right? And you can generate a really long string just like we did here if you want to as well. Cool. So we can keep that in there. We shouldn't have any problems if we keep it here. Oh, what is this? Process. This is process.env. That's good. Okay, let's do a quick test here. Before we test it, let's just finish up. We're done with the configuration. Now we can go back to let me close this up. Back to the sign up form. And then in here, we can do request that session equals an object here. And then there, let's see, we're going to set let's just do auth token here so we can have the same name in here. And that should be it. So now in here, we can only keep the user if you want. Let's see, we're going to have the token here. And we're going to have the user information here. So it's really up to whatever you decide. Since we have the token in the session here, we're just going to have the user information here. So I'm going to keep it like this. This is here going to be, remember this is optional. This is something you want to implement. This is your session cookie. And then this is going to be, we're going to be sending in either the token or the user. Right now we have the user because I have the auth token in the session. And let's see, now if we register a new user, right now if we look at the one with the previously, and we look at the cookies here, we already have this set up here. I think this is from the previous request maybe. So let's do a new one. You probably don't have that. Maybe that's from a previous cookie that I tested here. So that should not be in your case, but you were able to see it in mine. So let's register user 5, and then we should be able to now get the new response that we set up, which is only going to be the user. And then in the headers and the cookies, we should be able to see, or in the headers also, we're going to be able to see the cookies that we set. So let's see. Yeah, we don't see anything in the headers right now. We don't see anything that set cookies, which is what the session middleware is going to set for you. So yeah, this was a previous cookie, but then in here we don't see that set cookie key, and we're going to see it now when we make this request. So let's keep it in the body first, and let's send the request. We got the user information, right? That's what we decided to go with in here, user information. But now if we look at the headers and we scroll down, we see the set cookie here, and we see the name that we specify, my app session, and then this is the cookie that was set, and this is the auth token. This token here, we're going to test it in the website so we can see how it looks. And then the next one here is the signature, right? This is the signature, the value for the signature just to verify the cookie if we need to. So from this my app session, we can grab the token. So let's copy right after the equal signs all the way to the bottom before that colon there. We're going to copy that. And we're going to go to the JWT website, which is going to decode this for you. You can decode your tokens in here. You can delete the one that is there. You can paste the one we have. And right now we need to decode it. So right now it's not going to be verified because we don't even have the right format. So we're gonna have to run some steps here first, and then we'll test it in here again, or we can just do it from the terminal. But normally you can copy the tokens here. It's just that it's not valid, but this is good. We can go back to our project here. And then what we're gonna do here, let's open up a terminal here. And in the terminal, we can open a new terminal if we want, really quick. And then we're gonna run node. And then inside of node here, we can just grab, let's do let token equals, and then in quotes, we're gonna paste, inside of the quotes, we're gonna paste the token that we copy. And we're gonna hit enter. And then we're gonna use the function, let's say let payload equals, and we can use the token that split, so we can split it. Let's see, token that split. No, we need to first, let's do, so we got the token in the variable token, and then let's do we can just do let token equals a top b parentheses, and pass in quotes, let's pass in the string again, and then we can hit enter. Identifier token already been declared. Let's just stop this one and exit, so we can do it again. Come on, stop. Cool. Let's run it again real quick, and let's do let token equals quotes. Inside of quotes, we paste the token string, hit enter, and that I did it again. Let's just do let token 1 equals, and then let's do a top b, and then let's, in quotes, let's paste it in here inside a new variable called token 1, and hit enter. Now when we do, if we do token 1, we're gonna get this object with the key of token, and this is the token here. So we have decoded the string that we got. So now we can do let payload, and we can access, now we can see that we can see the dots here. We got the 3 sections, so the header, the payload is in the middle, and then the signatures at the end. So we can do let payload equals, let's do token 1 that split by, let's split by the dot, since they are divided by the dot, and then square brackets 1 will give us the payload. And then if we type payload, we can see, no, payload token 1 that split, and that gave me, oh yeah, we can run it to a top again, a top payload. And then there we go. Now we can see the user information that was encoded in there. So now we can also grab this here. And I think with this, we can go to the browser here, maybe. No, it needs to be the 3 section one. Yeah, so we can grab the whole entire, this one here. we can grab this one. If you want to see it here, this is not necessary. Just want to show you how it looks, because this will decode it for you. And it looks like it's breaking when I copy this. There's a dot that didn't copy somewhere. I cannot tell where did it go wrong here. So there's a dot here after Z9. Oops. After Z9. Oh, this needs to be in the same line. There you go. And there we go. Now that we copy that, I missed that. So in the header, we can see the information about the token. We can see the payload where we have the ID. Whoops, what happened? The ID and the email. And then when the token was created, where what time, what day was initialized, and then when it expires as well. And we set that to 24 hours for now. So here it says, look at the date, February 25, 2024, 1905. So the expiration will be Monday 26 at 1905. So now you can see it here, but now in the client will be able to use the same functions, the atop, and maybe another function using a package, which is easier, in order to read the encoded information about the user here. Even though this is encoded, this is not something that that we want to put any information that is too personal to the user, like a social security number, account numbers. None of that stuff should go in there. Only the user ID should be enough, should be like put in there. Maybe the email as well. But that depends on how you want to implement it. But no social security, no bank accounts, nothing that is, because this, if it's a hacker or someone that gets their hands on one of those tokens, they could grab it and read the information from there. The good thing is that we can verify these tokens to see if they're still valid, to see if they're still authorized. So the token, what the token is actually doing is that, let's say you go to a amusement park and you buy a ticket for the day, right? This is the same thing as getting a token. When you sign in, you register, you see you paid, or you register with your email and password, you get a token. You get this ticket to access this park for a whole entire day. So the token is what you get to prove that you have access to all the rides and use all the things that are included. Whatever is included, whatever is not included, you shouldn't have access. And this is what the token is doing. It's kind of like the ticket to go inside of every single ride inside of the park. All right, so we're gonna stop with this one in here. We have the user registration completed. And in the next video, we can work in the signing routes. And later, we're also going to come back to the sign up, and we're going to use Node Mailer to add another step into the registration, where we want to send an email to the user, and we want the user to confirm the email before they continue using our application. We're going to do that in another video. Before we stop here, remember we have the controllers folder here. So let's create a new file here. Let's just call it in users.js. And we're going to move the function. So we're going to copy all the stuff from the function, everything from the function all the way here. We're going to cut it. And we're going to go in here and we're going to say export. And then we're going to paste it in here. Export const sign up equals async. And then we can also copy this here. And we can put it here so we can have this in another file. And then all the different routes are going to go here as well. We also need to bring in the user and the bad request error back into here. So that way we have a controllers folder and a users controllers file. Sometimes you see people creating a different file for every single handler, and That is also good if your handlers are getting really big, but this is up to you. I'm just gonna keep one for everything that has to do with the user. And now that we can export this new sign up function, we're going to come back to the routes and let's do import curly brackets sign up from data/controllers/users.js. Make sure you got the .js at the end. And then we're going to pass it to this sign up method here, or routes. Cool. So now we have this separate function. Now we're keeping this routes really small here, this file, but everything is going to be work inside of this controller users file that we created. Let's just do it one more time just to verify that this is working. Let's create user 6. Let's go back to the body and let's hit send. We got user 6 created. We got the hash, and that's something we can remove in the next video. And then we got some other data that we can also delete. But this is it. Right now, we look again in the headers. We still have our new token that was created. This is a different one. If you want to verify, you can copy and paste it in the JWT.io website. So I'm going to stop here. I'll see you in the next video where we'll continue working with the user.